Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I want to read for Nonfiction November. In case you aren't aware, Nonfiction November is an annual event where booktubers, as well as people on other parts of the bookish internet, try to prioritize nonfiction books throughout the month. This is something that I believe was started by Olive at a Book Olive, and she's been running it and hosting it for a number of years now. And I always really enjoy participating in Nonfiction November, partially because I do enjoy nonfiction. I just am not great about prioritizing it in my reading life. It usually takes up maybe 10 to 25% of my annual reading, and I always want it to be more, but again, I'm just really bad at prioritizing it all the time. And so Nonfiction November is a really great opportunity to pick up nonfiction more regularly. One of the things with Nonfiction November is that there are a set of prompts that Olive always provides, and they're just these words that you can use as a sort of inspiration or starting point in case you are looking for that in order to make your TBR piles. However, you don't need to read any books that follow any of these prompts. Again, the whole idea is just to encourage people to pick up more nonfiction. So if you typically don't read nonfiction and you read one nonfiction book in the month of November, you've participated in Nonfiction November. But I always really like making TBR piles and seeing if I can find books that fall into the prompts, because again, I enjoy nonfiction and there's a handful of nonfiction books that I always want to be reading. And so the prompts can be really useful in helping you pick out which ones you actually are going to try to prioritize in the month of November. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I put out a video talking about my end of the year goals. And one of my end of the year goals was to work through these older books that have been sitting on my TBR pile. And the books that fall into my Nonfiction November TBR are basically not from that pile because most of those books were fiction books. So my goal is to make a decent amount of progress on that original pile in the months of October and December. And for November, I'll probably be focusing on my nonfiction. The good news about my TBR pile for Nonfiction November is that these are all books that I own. So even if I'm not sort of working on my oldest books on my physical TBR, I'm still working on my physical TBR throughout the month of November, which I think helps me sort of rationalizing participating in it, even though I have other goals. But honestly, all my goals are pretty loose. So I'm going to go through each of the word prompts and talk about the book that I picked out that can be associated with that prompt. And then at the end, I'll talk about a couple of other nonfiction books that I could potentially read depending on how fast or slow my reading is going, or if I want to swap things out or try something different and things along those lines. So the first word is collection. And so this is a word that can be, again, all of these words can be taken very broadly or in a variety of different ways, which is the point of the prompts. And the way that I'm going to take it is as in a collection of essays. And so I have White Magic by Elisa Washuta. This is a book that came out earlier this year. It was published by Tin House. I was sent this proof copy from Tin House, and I haven't read it yet, but I've heard really good things about it. This author is part of the Cowlitz Indian tribe, and this is a collection of essays talking about a variety of things, including modern day witchcraft and sort of how her life led her to exploring that. But it also talks about other things like the Oregon Trail and colonialism and Twin Peaks and things like that. So she covers a wide variety of things in here from what I've heard. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of essay collections. And so this one feels like one that would be really interesting to check out and pretty high priority for me just because I've been wanting to read this since it came out in April of this year. The next prompt is industry, and for this one I have Silver, Sword, and Stone, The Three Crucibles in Latin American Story by Marie Arana. And so this is a nonfiction historical book that looks at these three items and sort of how it has shaped Latin America. And so the author looks at what she says are the three driving forces: exploitation in regards to silver and the mining that has gone on in specifically, I think, Peru. Then the sword, which has to do with the significant amount of violence that has gone on in Latin America. And then religion, which is the stone part of it, and talks about sort of this Jesuit priest in Bolivia. And so from what I could tell from this book, she takes like 3 specific situations and uses that as a way to write about Latin America as a whole. So I'm really intrigued by this one. The industry one is a little bit of a stretch, but since this is talking about gold mines or mines in general, I feel like the industry part is kind of part of this book, even though it's not the entirety of this book, but I feel like industry will be woven in throughout the various topics that this author talks about. This one is a little bit of a thicker book, and so this is one I'll probably need to like break up a little bit. Like I'll try to read a couple of chapters at a time and break it up with some of the other books, because I know for me history books can take a little bit longer to get through. Okay, the next prompt is style, and so for this one I'm interpreting it as kind of like a unique quote-unquote way of telling a nonfiction story. And so for that, I'm picking up a graphic memoir, and this is Good Talk by Mira Jacob. I've heard nothing but amazing things about this book, and so I like checked it out from the library either earlier this year or maybe last year, and I just didn't have enough time to get to it in like the short span that I had it checked out for. And so earlier this year, I ended up just picking up my own copy of it, and I'm very excited to check this one out. So yeah, this one is told in completely comic style, and even like the way this comic is set up is slightly less traditional. And so yeah, I feel like this one fits perfectly for style. All right, and the final prompt is treatment. And for this one, I am going to interpret it as like sort of reading a book that deals with the treatment of a specific group of people. And I have The Undocumented Americans by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio. So this is a book talking about undocumented Americans in the United States. The author herself was on DACA in 2016 when there was sort of an increased awareness on undocumented Americans. And so she decided to start writing stories and writing about the people around her that she knew were undocumented Americans. And so this book looks at what their lives are actually like, and I think we'll touch on basically how they're treated and how they're talked about and things along those lines. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to pick this one up too. This one is kind of like a higher priority book in terms of like my excitement for it, because I've heard nothing but amazing things about this. Also, it's relatively short, so I feel like I should be able to prioritize this one this month. Okay, so those are the 4 books that I've picked out to go along with the 4 word prompts, and then I have 2 more books picked out. One of them is Travels with Charlie by John Steinbeck. This is a nonfiction book following John Steinbeck as he travels throughout the United States with his dog Charlie, and this is a book that actually is on that original TBR pile, and so I kind of want to read it, even though it doesn't really fit along with any of the prompts, but I want to read it because, you know, I want to read it before the end of the year anyways. So yeah, this was one that like I think I'm going to try to prioritize over even some of those like forward prompt ones. And the other one that I think would be nice to get to this month would be Run, which is by John Lewis, Andrew Iden, Elle Fury, and Nate Powell. I think those last 2 are the illustrators on this. But this is basically the follow-up to the March trilogy, which followed John Lewis's life growing up until basically the March on Washington. And this, I believe, is the first book in a new trilogy that is coming out talking about how he got involved in politics. So yeah, this just came out this summer, and I'm really excited to check it out. I've been looking forward to this since basically March book 3 came out, because they kept hinting that they were going to do more. And then, you know, things happen, life happens and whatnot, and it got delayed for quite a bit of time. And I'm excited to finally have my hands on a copy and to check this out myself. So since it's a comic, I feel like I could potentially squeeze it in, but who knows? We'll see what happens. So that is everything I have for you all. Let me know down in the comments below if you are participating in Nonfiction November. Feel free to link your videos if you have a to be read pile video or anything like that. I'll try my best to review them, because usually things with links get marked as spam. But if you don't have a video, feel free to tell me a book that you are excited to try to read during Nonfiction November. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.